This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are we doing today on this Football Friday? It is The Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. You're checking us out on the Bama Central YouTube channel, or you're checking us out on my own social media machines at Joe Gaither 6 on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platforms, The Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on Amazon. We're going to have a fun Football Friday, and we invite you to give us your comments, your questions, your queries, and complaints right there in the comment section at Joe Gaither 6. We are going to talk mostly about Alabama and South Florida, kicking off tomorrow at 6 o'clock in Bryant-Denny Stadium. We are going to rename the facility Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That officially happens tomorrow, so we're going to get into that discussion as well today. We're going to bring on a lot of friends. We got a couple of friends in the waiting room to talk about the Alabama-South Florida game and a couple other high-profile games. We'll get into Texas, Michigan, California, Auburn, Tennessee, NC State. A lot of fun football to talk about this weekend. But before we do, we want to tell you about our friends Purple Turtle Roofing. They're the most reliable residential roofing replacement company in Alabama and Mississippi. Whether it's addressing leaks, storm damage, or general wear and tear, Purple Turtle Roofing is going to be there to deliver exceptional roof repair for your property. Purple Turtle Roofing is the leading expert in local residential roofing solutions, specializing in providing unparalleled service and quality craftsmanship for all roof replacement needs. Call Dustin Foley and his team today at 877-PT-ROOF-5 for a free roof inspection. That's 877-787-6635 to schedule your appointment, and one of their qualified employees will come check out your roof for free and make sure you're prepared for any and all of life's storms. Check them out online today at roofturtle.com. So, let's have a lot of fun on a Football Friday. Let's talk to Katie Windham, Hunter De Siver, and Will Miller. You follow them at Katie Windham at Real WB Miller and at Hunter De Siver on the Twitter machine. They make up most of the brain power at BamaCentral.com. Alabama Crimson Tide on SI. How are we doing today, Katie? How are you excited? Week number 2 in college football. How are you?
I'm good. I am excited. I'm excited for tomorrow. It was nice last week having real football finally. I'm excited tomorrow to hopefully see a little bit more, the quality of opponent to raise a little bit. And maybe we can have a little more competitive game, or at least figure out a little bit more about Alabama.
Will Miller, how's it going? First week, second, third week of school. Oh my goodness. Time is flying by. How are you doing? Are you surviving?
Yeah, surviving is a good word for it. Another week in the can. I feel good about that. Like Katie, I'm excited for tomorrow. We were both present at the game last year in Tampa, so it'll be interesting to see what this game has in store for this second offering. I guess rematch. A lot of anticipation you wouldn't necessarily expect from this matchup that was kind of created by what we saw over in Raymond James Stadium around this time last year. So I'm ready to go.
We can only go up from last year from a game perspective and just a game day as a media person perspective from last year's game. We can only go up.
What did y'all do during the delay? What did you do during the delay, Katie? Did you have a book with you? You usually do somewhere in your bag, or did y'all do anything?
I think that day I didn't bring one, and I also didn't have any food in my backpack. And my lesson from that day on is to always have some sort of snack in my bag, because they did not have any food. They gave us a pregame boxed meal and then nothing else. No snacks, no halftime meal, no we're in here for a long time, here's some food. And so we were all just chilling in the press box. And maybe they had on, I guess, TVs of other games, but yeah, that was my lesson learned of always, especially on the road. We're not in Bryant-Denny, always keeping food in my backpack.
Will Miller, what did you do during your delay? I'm sure it didn't faze you too badly.
I just watched other games on my laptop for the most part. I no longer remember which. I I thought the delay was going to be longer. To tell you the truth, everything Katie's saying is absolutely right. But they got a little bit of game out of the way before it started. So things were underway, and then it just was brought to a screeching halt. And then, like she said, there just wasn't a whole lot to it. But I will say this: the Coke from the machines there was exquisite, as Coca-Cola goes. So credit where credit's due. But yeah, no, it was. And the game was fun. I had a really good time. But that, however long the delay lasted, that wasn't my favorite segment of it.
Hunter De Siver, it'll be your first time in Bryant-Denny Stadium for the season. Obviously, you haven't missed too much. A big blowout against an inferior opponent. Are you excited for week number 2 in college football?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pumped for the whole week in general, but for Alabama's sake, I mean, we got this rematch, but we also have the Saban Field declaration. That's a big, big deal.
So let's go back to we got a couple thoughts on the docket. All you guys got the rundown. We want one thought. Last week, Alabama beat Western Kentucky 63-0. So it's a huge blowout. Obviously, it's an inferior opponent. Not a whole lot to take away from it. I want a single thought from the game, and we'll just go right around the circle clockwise, starting with Katie Windham. What was your one takeaway, your one thought from last week's blowout win against Western Kentucky?
My computer was just freezing a little bit, so if I freeze, y'all just move on. Really, to me, it was how many people Alabama played. And I know in a game like that, with a score like that, obviously towards the end a lot, you're going to play a lot of people. But really, even in the first half, on both sides of the ball, Alabama was rotating in a lot of people. And so is that we're just trying to figure out who's best? Is that we want to play this many people all year? I talked to Mo Linguist earlier in the week, and he had talked about what he learned when he worked for Mike McCarthy in the Cowboys, and just about how long the college football season is now, how many people you need to have ready. And so I think it's a little bit of that. And then also I think, with the portal these days, I think you want to play as many guys as possible and keep them happy. And, oh, look, you played week 1. You could play the rest of the year. Don't enter the portal. And so I'll be interested to see. That was kind of my big takeaway from last week, is how many guys they played, and then to see if that kind of continues moving forward.
Hunter De Siver.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to say one word to describe the whole night, explosive, without a doubt. That just seems to be the main theme throughout the entire night. The main stat that comes out of that, I believe Alabama, when Justice Haynes went 85 yards, that was their 18th play of the night, and it was their 5th touchdown to be 35 points. Meanwhile, the drive right before it for Western Kentucky, it was 21 plays, and they get stopped on 4th down. Like, the amount of explosive plays that happened that night, it was unbelievable. Now, do I think they could do that every single week? Of course not. But, they were getting 20, 30 yards per play, and it was incredible really to see. A great start.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off something Katie said earlier. She mentioned something about maybe learning a little bit more about Alabama, and I think that was one of my takeaways. They did a lot of nice things in that game last week, but how much did we really learn other than, Ryan Williams just might be a stud, which a lot of people already thought that. You knew Justice Haynes was poised for a breakout kind of year. Jam Miller can run the ball hard like he did. Other players stepping up. I was surprised at how open Kalen DeBoer was about just using all those bodies and getting those guys into games. It's kind of an unspoken part of games like that. But was there tons of new ground broken? I'm not entirely sure. And that's something I'm looking ahead to this week. Maybe my assessment will be different.
All right, so we're hanging out and we're trying to wrap up Western Kentucky week, and I want to go back to Katie's thought, and then we'll dance around with Hunter's thought as well. Katie asks about or discusses, really, and I think is the main discussion for the game, how many people played during critical moments in the first half. You got before halftime, 21 defenders playing for Alabama, and obviously 11 starters. So you're bringing in backups at multiple positions. And her question is basically, are we going to see this all year, or was this just for the first week and just because you played Western Kentucky and just because you blew them out? And so, guys, will what do you think? Are we? I mean, South Florida is going to be another week where it's going to be tough to tell if this is going to be a trend or not. You're probably, I mean, you are much more talented than South Florida is. You should beat them. The spread is 31 points. You should beat the brakes off of them. So you're going to see a lot of guys, at least towards the end of the game. But will you see the depth on display when, say, Georgia comes to town? Say you go up to Wisconsin, when you have some of these games where the talent is a whole lot closer.
Sometimes situations will call for it. She mentioned about how long the season has gotten, and you're talking about a big shift for, contenders from when I started watching football. Your absolute maximum was 14 games, and most teams didn't play that many, or at least some teams, to now, and your low end is 12, to now you have 17 is your potential maximum number. And in football, that is going to take a lot out of you. It's not the NCAA tournament in basketball where you're playing 3 extra games and maybe you don't get as banged up. You're going to get banged up after a football game. And so I think it's important to get those pieces in, even if they're rotational pieces, role players, if you will, to get those people game reps. Because as the season turns into more and more of a grind, there's going to be times inevitably that you need it, regardless of who you are. So it's better to have people who have adjusted to playing in a game, whether it's against Western Kentucky or South Florida or Wisconsin or Georgia, Texas, all these other major players out there. I think it's a positive for this team that if they have the amount of people that they can plug and play well, I do think the coaching staff is keen on figuring that out in any case, and that's what you saw last week. And I do expect that you'll probably see some of it this week.
Hunter, do you think we're going to see this depth on display when Georgia comes to town? You're going to see what, 4, 5, 6 defensive backs in and out of the action when the game's tight against the Georgia Bulldogs?
Well, against Georgia, no. I feel like the starter's got to be out for the entire time. But just in general for other games, I mean, when you look at our schedule, like there's definitely some teams that are going to be, I guess, for lack of better terms, an easy game, an easy victory. But you got to remember, these are all D1 athletes that they're going against. Like, they're going to have tired legs. It's not going to be smooth sailing, even if they win 63-0. Like, it's good to have all these other guys, these freshmen and sophomores, play. That way you have tired legs, rest for a little bit, and even finish games early. But also for those new guys, you get to see a glimpse of Alabama in the future.
All right, we're going to dance around with Hunter's one big thought, the explosive plays that we saw in Bryant-Denny Stadium. 85 yards to Ryan Williams, 85 yards Justice Haynes, 39, 40-yard run for Jam Miller. You had it all over the field. 55-yarder, another one for Ryan Williams. It was just all over the field, and obviously quarterback Jalen Milroe had 2 big old runs as well. We're going to throw it to you, Katie, and talk about the offense and dance with whether it was, okay, you're playing against Western Kentucky, it's an inferior defense, or whether, okay, this is what we expect to see all year because Alabama is basically schematically and out athletically speaking against the other defense. Basically, is Alabama going to be able to continue to rely on or utilize explosive plays throughout the rest of the season because it was good scheme, or was Saturday more because, okay, Western Kentucky, you can't hang on the field athletically with Alabama?
I mean, I think they're going to keep utilizing them, but I think Caleb was kind of asked about this on Monday, I guess, and about the deep balls and big plays. And I mean, it's not how they draw it up necessarily. It's kind of like it's not like it was Jalen's first read to do a 50-yard bomb to Ryan Williams that ends up being around 80-yard touchdown. It's kind of how the play develops. So I don't think that's Kalen DeBoer is an offensive mind. Is that all he's drawing up every week is explosive plays? Obviously not. I think there will be times that Alabama will hit big plays. It makes me think of I guess it was probably like the 2018 and 2019 seasons when Tua was the quarterback. And I mean, it seemed like every game Alabama would score on the first or second or third play with a big touchdown. And did that offense rely on those? No. But did they happen a lot? Yeah. And I think we could see that happen with this team. But yeah, it's also, of course, going to depend on the quality of opponent. And I think tomorrow we'll see more sustained drives, kind of going back to the beginning of the show. Last year, it was almost just like impossible to wrap your mind around like how bad the offensive drives were, that like series after series, the offense would go out there and do nothing against USF. I think we'll see a little more success tomorrow.
All right, Will Miller, your turn with Hunter's thought about the explosive plays, and they were impressive on Saturday night in Bryant-Denny Stadium. What do you think about maybe the concept that the Alabama fans always feel like they have to find something to complain about? Because in this time and in this instance, it's, well, maybe Alabama scored too fast.
I think you've raised two different issues here, Joe. With Hunter's thought, I think that it's certainly a strength. We've seen offenses throughout the years and various teams that don't have the ability to go downfield quickly, even if they wanted to. We have seen teams lean on it a little bit too much and it come back to maybe bite them in the backside in a key moment or two. As a Chicago Bears fan, Joe, I think you're familiar with either. As to Alabama fans finding anything to complain about, I feel like that's as existential of a truth as the sky being blue, because that's something that you're always going to see time in and time out. I mean, you have people belly aching about, multiple 80-plus yard touchdowns in a single game, when earlier that same day they're belly aching about having a new coach, not being sure about things. I mean, it's just like the hand on the clock moves over to the next 5-minute interval in some respects. And I think you're going to see more of this offense as different teams, different defensive packages, and certainly different talent levels. No disrespect to Western Kentucky line up opposite this Alabama team, but there will be a time for that. And maybe that time's this week. Maybe it's in the near future. I mean, it'll obviously probably be in Madison coming up here very shortly. But I mean, I think these things will unfold. Not everything's going to happen overnight. And maybe the team's not all the way developed either way. It's week one. We don't know. I think that's not the end of the world either.
All right, I'm going to give everybody a chance to put on their Alabama fan hat or their complainer hat or even their coach's hat, whatever kind of angle they want to take. But Alabama cannot stay the same from week one. Alabama has to improve from week one to week number 2. Even though it was 63-0, you got to look inside the game a little bit. What are the ways that Alabama needs to improve? Everybody gets one way or their one way. What is the number one way that Katie Windham wants to see Alabama improve from week number 1 to week number 2?
I mean, it's hard from a 63-0 game to say like there's things from that game itself they need to improve on. But like, I mean, if I'm thinking of a specific thing from that game, obviously the 4th down defense wasn't. They got this stop, in the red zone on 4th down, but had given up 2 before that. And I kind of joked in the press box before that last play happened that if Alabama gives up this 4th down, their 4th down defense stats for the year are going to be shot if they start out 0 for 3. But so I think maybe the defense doing a little bit better job of getting off the field, and then the offense sustaining a little bit more.
Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, kind of piggybacking what Katie said, I feel like the time of possession, although Alabama dominated on the scoreboard, they really couldn't get off the field too often on defense, besides a few 4th down stops and a few punts later on in the drive. But if I had to pick something that not necessarily could be improved, but I'd like to see more, it wasn't an issue in the game because all the explosive plays, but Jalen Milroe only had 9 pass attempts. I mean, granted, he completed 7 of them, but I definitely would like to see him get at least 15, 20 pass attempts in a game, because that's what every game is going to be. Like, you're not going to – if you have 9 pass attempts in a game, like 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to do so great. But when you have like 20, 25, that's when you really see a real snap, a real game. Yeah.
I think that forcing the issue on defense is going to be important. This team can compete in the trenches. They've got size, and now they're not only getting some experience, but some contributions from some guys that had to step up this year and maybe make names for themselves. I'm thinking types like Tim Smith, who's one of the guys on this team that I'm excited about. I thought Western Kentucky moved the football, and especially after TJ Finley got sent to the bench, it felt like they took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit with respect to you just want to come out of the game healthy at a certain point. And I certainly think you saw a little bit of that in this past game. But I certainly think that, the defense is maybe capable of, one or two more 3-and-out possessions, quick stops. You're on the field 3 or 4 plays, then you're off. And I felt like in the early going, maybe there wasn't enough of that. Could have been jitters, could have been a lot of things. Like I've said multiple times here on the program, it's only week 1. And naturally people are going to latch on to things because that's all you've got. Katie mentioned finally some real football, and that's, as of right now, that's the only real football you got. I get it, but that's what I think we could see more of it. It starts in the box, certainly extends to the second level and the secondary, and I think those steps will be taken. That progress will be made.
All right, so I think for myself, I want to go back to my Thursday program where we talked about focuses for this upcoming game against South Florida, and I want to go to cleaning up the negative plays on offense. You had a false start, you have delay of game, you've got 2 holding penalties, you allow a sack, and just in general, the operation wasn't as clean as it could have been. Obviously, everybody is excited about the explosive plays, and I think my friends outlined those very well. But cleaning up the negative plays, just a little mental errors, will be huge for Alabama. Before we get into the ceremony that's happening on Saturday, it's going to be very exciting. It's going to be very historic. Everybody's going to be excited about the renaming of Saban Field. Before we get into that with our friends, let me tell you about my friend Derek Daniel at State Farm. Call him today at 205-758-3391 for all of your home, life, and auto insurance needs. Derek Daniel and his team can get you taken care of today. If you need renter's insurance, boater's insurance, whatever you need in the insurance world, Derek Daniel and State Farm can take care of you. You need a local agent, somebody who knows the area very well, especially if you're just moving here from out of town for the school year or just taking a new job right here in the area. Call him today at 205-758-3391 or visit him at 4604 Highway 69 in Northport, Alabama, 35473. You can even visit him online at agentderekdaniel.com. All right, on Saturday at 2:30, tomorrow at 2:30, we're going to have a lot of fun right in front of Bryant-Denny Stadium as we are officially changing the name. Katie, correct me. It's Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium or Saban Field on Bryant-Denny Stadium, in Bryant-Denny Stadium? It's Saban Field at Bryant-Denny Stadium is how I understand it.
Yeah, that's what I believe. That's what it is.
All right, and so we're we're celebrating our ceremony at 2:30 tomorrow, and it's going to be the who's who. Basically, everybody who ever played for Coach Saban is getting the invitation, and it's going to be a huge packed house to celebrate Coach Saban. Obviously, he was in Bryant-Denny Stadium this past Saturday, but he will be actually on display and honored this Saturday. Makes us think about the past 17 years. And so, Will Miller, we'll start with you. And I want our favorite memory on what will be now Saban Field during for Coach Saban's time over the last 17 years in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Will Miller, what will be your favorite memory? And just what do you think about the ceremony coming up tomorrow?
That's a good question, Joe. I've been very fortunate to attend a lot of games since I was very young.
Spoiled?
I don't know. One that comes to mind immediately is the 2012 Iron Bowl. Watching one of the worst SEC West teams of any of our lifetimes come in, and as a 10-year-old kid, they're your hated rival. And obviously, since I got in this business, I've taken the fan hat off. But back then, not so. Really enjoyable watching 49-0, and it was pretty unceremonious, but the game played out how you thought it would, but it was really enjoyable for what it was. The weather wasn't too bad, pretty clear day in late November, not too extremely cold. I went with my dad. We both had a great time. I was also at the 2014 one, which was obviously a lot more theatrical, but yeah, that 2012 Iron Bowl, off the top of my head, that one's one of my favorites.
Me? All right, cool. I didn't know the order, but all right. So I came to Alabama in 2019 as a student. I'm from Long Island, so college football wasn't a huge part of my life exactly. It was more NFL. So I'm only going to really go from 2019 up until now. My favorite game, even though Alabama lost, is going to be Alabama versus LSU in 2019. Just the amount of star talent, not only from that college football season, but in the NFL now, is incredible. And the game itself was unbelievable. Like, Alabama's down the entire game. They come back. They can never really get over the hump, but just see all that talent from both sides go head to head before we see them as these Pro Bowlers and All Pros now in the NFL. It was really something special to see. Favorite moment, I have two. One of them from that same 2019 season, we're going to go with Trayvon Diggs' 100-yard fumble return against Tennessee. That was the first game with the LED lights, and it wasn't the first touchdown of the game. It was right when it was like late third quarter, I think, maybe early fourth quarter, and the place just went nuts. It might have been the loudest I've ever heard Bryant-Denny Stadium. And the second loudest, I'd say, which is another moment here, I'm going to go with Alabama versus Texas A&M. I think it was 2022 with the whole Jimbo Fisher, Nick Saban beef. And it came down to the last play, and it was a forced incompletion in the end zone. Like, it was only A&M only needed 2 yards to go, and they couldn't get it. And it was so loud, and it was unbelievable. So those are my 3 answers.
Those are some good ones. I've forgotten about some of those because I feel like really once you cross over to the media side, I feel like I remember games differently. But really, I think when I think about Saban memories and Bryant-Denny, I really think about the early Saban days because really I think you could say from 2012 on, it kind of just got to a point where you just rolled up to Bryant-Denny expecting to win. And it wasn't like, even if it was a good team coming to town, you still just knew or thought that Alabama was going to win. So, one that sticks out the most that I enjoyed a lot at the time was the 2008 Iron Bowl. Growing up in Montgomery, Auburn having won 6 in a row at that point, not just winning them, but shutting them out, blocking that field goal, getting to go back to school and brag to all the Auburn fans. That meant a lot to me at the time. One of my most vivid memories in Bryant-Denny is the 2009 LSU game, and I can still picture Julio running down the sideline on that play and just how loud it got at the time. And then really the 2013 LSU game, when AJ jumped into Saban's arms after the game, I remember we were that was the last big roadblock on the schedule. And so after Alabama won that game, it was just like jubilation because we thought for sure Alabama was on the way to a three-peat, and then unfortunately, the kick six happened a couple weeks later. But at that point, LSU seemed like kind of the last big test, and I remember Bryant-Denny was pretty hyped for that game. But then also the game of the century in the 2019 LSU game, I remember even though Alabama lost those games, just the environments in Tuscaloosa that day. In 2011, all the celebrities that were there, and then in 2019, obviously Trump was there, which from a media, that was my senior year of college. And I covered that game for the AP. So I sat in the student section for some of the game and was down on the field at the end. So that was a crazy game day overall. But obviously a lot of good memories in Bryant-Denny, both from a fan and then a student perspective and then a media perspective.
That 2019 LSU game, I remember, Joe will probably find this story funny. The week before that game, everybody was so excited for that game as the season progressed, and it was pretty clear what LSU was because they got some hype the year before, and then, even after Florida trounced them beat them in the swamp, had a pretty decisive ending to that game, and then Alabama kind of took the wheels off in Baton Rouge, and one of the rare non-competitive Baton Rouge games of that series. The week before the 2019 games, we were all going, me, my mom, my dad. My sister does not care about football, never has. Very disappointing to all of us. I did not have my best showing on a biology test 5 days before the game and was thinking, I just hope my parents still let me go to this stupid football game. And luckily they did. But there were some pins and needles there before that. But a very memorable time overall, like Katie and Hunter both said.
Well, y'all hit a lot of the ones that were on my sheet. Katie, you hit the last few that were on my sheet that just mean a lot to me. My freshman year at the 36-0 game, the 36-0 All Iron Bowl, and then the LSU game. I had went to the restroom, and by the time I was in the walkway, walking back up to my seats, Julio Jones was catching that screen pass. And so the stadium just fell down around me. It was just, pandemonium. And exactly as you said, Kitty, I went through basically the entire schedule from 2011 on. The 9-6 loss in LSU. With LSU, you've got one close game. You've got Alabama beating Tennessee 19-14 in 2015, and the rest of it, you got to go to like 20.
That game was weird.
Yeah, you got to go to 2020, 2021 before you get any close games against nearly anyone in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Most of Coach Saban's losses coming on the road in strange circumstances each and every year. So it's going to be fun celebrating Coach Saban this weekend. We will be there at 2:30 right there for Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. You'll be able to check out the video for the ceremony on the Bama Central YouTube channel, and we'll include that in our game day coverage. Let's step just a little bit outside ourselves just for a second and welcome on a friend, Joey Van Zummeren. You can follow him on the Twitter machine at JoeyBZ_. He's covering the Missouri Tigers from the Missouri Tigers on SI. They beat Murray State 50 million points to nothing this past weekend. They're taking on another cupcake against Buffalo. Joey, we've been talking about Alabama and Western Kentucky. We are about to talk about USF. Before we do that, we want to get your quick little rundown on your game, Missouri against Buffalo.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's kind of another cupcake. This should be a game that Missouri wins by 30. They are 31-point favorites. That's at least what they opened at. I haven't checked it since then, but this is at least a step up from Murray State. This is a FBS team, some action coming to Columbia this weekend. So ironically enough, just like Murray State, Buffalo has a coach that was on the South Carolina coaching staff from 2021 to 2023. So the Shane Beamer coaching tree is growing, I guess you could say. Pete Limbo, he has also been a head coach before, unlike Jody Wright. Pete Limbo coached at Elon and Rice, I believe. Really turned those programs around. Drinkwitz complimented his ability to recruit, build culture this past week. And so kind of like Murray State, though, not as they have quite a few new players. Obviously, though, Mizzou actually has some tape to watch this week compared to last week, where Murray State has 60 new players, new starters at every single position, new coaches and everything like that. This time, Mizzou obviously has 4 quarters of tape to watch for Buffalo. Pete Limbo, special teams coordinator at South Carolina before. That was kind of his main thing before becoming a head coach. And he is known for his special teams trickery. So just like we saw last week with Murray State opening the game with an onside and kick, I wouldn't be surprised to see maybe not as all out of nowhere as that or meaningless as that, but some special teams trickery I'm sure will play a part in it. And then at quarterback is actually a quarterback that Mizzou has faced before, CJ Agbana. He was SEMO's, Southeastern Missouri's quarterback in 2021 when Mizzou played them. Wasn't a great day for CJ Agbana then because he was playing on SEMO against Mizzou. But I think this is really going to be a good test for Mizzou. And that's kind of the main story this week is even if it's going to be another
Joey,
game.
No.
Not a test and not a test in the fact that they're going to really be a great example of what Mizzou is going to face down the road here. But there is some similar aspects. This will be a good practice for Missouri because there's going to be some similar elements this week against Buffalo that they're going to have to face in the coming weeks. Number one being that quarterback, CJ Agbana. He can do stuff with his legs, scrambles out of the pocket quite a bit. Really fast guy. And you look at Mizzou's next 2 opponents. They got Thomas Castellanos next week in Boston College and then Diego Pavia as well. So Agbana's probably a more similar run to Castellanos compared to Pavia, who is just a big body that is really difficult to tackle. So Mizzou has 3 mobile quarterbacks coming up here. We'll see. They did lose. I mentioned this in my article that they did lose Tyron Hopper, now a Green Bay Packer, who is kind of their rangy. I mentioned that specifically for you, Joe. And and then he was just really a rangy guy that played sideline to sideline. So if I had to guess, I think it's going to be Khalil Jacobs, the South Alabama transfer, who Alabama was also in the running for. That's going to be doing most of that quarterback spy stuff. So I think this week, if anything, we're going to learn a little bit more about this Mizzou team than we did last week.
Okay, well, it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll keep an eye on Missouri. Joe, do you want to stick around for our picks? We're going to pick.
Absolutely. I don't know how much insight I'll have on the rest of the college football world.
That's okay. I have
seven
games, and they're all games with name opponents. They're the best 7 games of the weekend. Sorry, Missouri's not on our sheet because no, it shouldn't be a good test. Missouri, if you are who you think you are, you got to squash them like a bug. Well, all right, I got one question.
They absolutely should.
I got one question left for our sheet before we get into our picks. So this is going to all 3 of our Bama Central correspondents. Look, Alabama last year against South Florida, terrible, 17-3. Yes, it was a win, terrible performance, sparked everything. Okay, everybody read all the stories, and we all know what happened. What's the one key this year for Alabama going into the South Florida game? Is it dealing with the pace? Is it having more consistency on offense? Whatever it is, it can be anything you like. You guys all know this team inside and out. So, Katie, I want to start with you, and then we'll go to Hunter, and then Will. What is your biggest key when you're sitting down in Bryant Denny Stadium on Saturday? You're thinking, okay, Alabama needs to do this to have it be smooth sailing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't think there's really like a key to victory this week because it would just be a colossal meltdown if somehow Alabama lost. But I think a key is going to kind of be, do they play with the same intensity that we saw last week? We heard them talking after the game about like the swarm D, and we saw that on the field, the intensity on defense. So we didn't get to see, like we've talked about multiple times already, a ton from the offense. But, last week, it's the first game of the year. It's the first game under Kalen. You're fired up to play. Last year, like you just hit on, there was not intensity down in South Florida that day in Raymond James. So kind of are we going to see intensity on both sides of the ball for 60 minutes? Is the defense going to be going for another shutout, which I think is obviously going to be more challenging to do this weekend? Is the offense going to be able to play consistently? Are we going to get to see a little bit more from them? But also, I think a key is going to be, obviously, Alabama's offensive line had a wrench thrown into it right before the game last week with Proctor going out in warm-ups, and then you had the early play where 2 of the starters went out when their helmet came off. And so a key is going to be, how does the offensive line play, whether Proctor plays, whether Pritchett plays, whether Booker ends up playing left tackle, and you kind of shift the whole offensive line. Kind of how do they communicate, and how does that work this last game at home before next week you have to hit the road, and communication is going to become a lot more important.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with the first part of what Katie said regarding the intensity of the defense. Can they keep that up? Because against Western Kentucky, the run game was non-existent for Western Kentucky whatsoever. But when I looked at USF, not only did their quarterback have 75 yards, but so did the running back, and running back had 2 touchdowns as well. So, I mean, obviously, do I think both of them are going to have 75-plus yards again? Probably not, but it's a big difference between last week, where I think the 2 combined, quarterback and running back, combined for about 35, and now here it's 150. So I think if you keep up that intensity, stop the run, you're golden. Because I think the Alabama's defensive backs will be perfectly fine. I think they really showed that with all of, like, there's probably at least 8 to 10 different defensive backs that played. And I think all of them showed a lot of promise for the rest of the season. So I have no issue really there at this time for this opponent.
I just don't think it's going to be the same game at all. Last year, so many circumstances. I mean, I know that sounds vague, but you had the Texas game the previous week, which was the only double-digit home loss of the Nick Saban era. if I'm not mistaken. And it took that long, and it was to a team that good for that to take place. That's how rare that sort of thing was. Mentioned the home game dominance earlier in the show. You had Jalen Milroe not playing in the game, and Nick Saban being willing to go out on his shield with Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson. Had it come down to losing with those two guys, I think Nick Saban probably would have done it. That would have been a disaster scenario on so many levels, and a lot of people already do think the game was a disaster. But I think more than anything, this Alabama team, I mean, the last thing you want to do if you're USF or if you're an opponent that Alabama expects to beat anyway is to put a chip on their shoulder, because now they're going to know you caught them on the back foot last year. They don't want to experience that again. They don't want to go through the motions with you in such a way that the game is still in doubt 50 plus minutes of game time down the chute. I think that feeling is going to be strong. I think Jalen Milroe playing in this game makes a difference. They're still going to have an answer for Byron Brown, and Alex Golesh's scheming has proven to be a challenge, obviously, as we've seen in multiple capacities, whether it be USF, whether it be Tennessee 2 years ago, obviously coming to mind. And Byron Brown is one of the best quarterbacks in the group of five. He's number 2 on my list behind Caden Salter over at Liberty. But you ask yourself, is that going to be enough? I don't think it's even going to be close this year. Although not only all the unique circumstances last year, this year you also have an Alabama team that's going to devote itself to not having that happen again. And I think that in terms of, the talent gap and everything else, that's going to be enough of a difference that you're going to see a completely different football game.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Will. I think that you captured the intensity that Will and that Katie and Hunter outlined, and you kind of clean up some of the offensive mistakes that I outlined earlier in the program. Then you're going to be cooking with a lot of gas. The defense really impressed me this past week with its intensity. Obviously, it was Western Kentucky, and I do acknowledge, and I do think that TJ Finley flat out quit on his team. So it did help the Alabama defensive performance. But with that kind of aid, I was impressed with Alabama's kind of ability or tendency to fly around defensively, even on some missed tackles. There was guys missing tackles because they were flying past the ball carrier, running, which helped on certain instances. And so I'm very curious to see if that continues throughout the rest of the year. And if it does, then I think the offense – any opponent. I know you got big time opponents with Georgia, and you got big time opponents with Tennessee and Oklahoma. You got a lot of you guys know them all on the schedule, but I think the offense is going to be just fine the whole year. And so it's going to be kind of how the defense is able to deal with a curveball with the speed, because I think that if they're able to get off on a good first down, if they're able to get to second and six or less, they're going to start rolling, and that's going to be fun to see how Alabama deals with that. How Alabama deals with a dual threat quarterback and a fast paced offense, two elements that Alabama under Nick Saban really struggled with. I think it's going to be really interesting tomorrow night in Bryant-Denny Stadium. All right, y'all want to make some picks? I got 7 games on our sheet. Before we make our picks, I want to tell you about Druid City Music Hall. It's the premier place for live music on the Strip. I was in there last night for about 30, 40 minutes watching an artist who had a pretty good little show, so it was a lot of fun. Tonight, it's going to be Zach Hood on the Strip. Zach Hood will start his program at 8 o'clock, and then they got shows next week. Tyler Braden next Thursday with Waylon Wyatt and Baker Blankenship next Friday right there at Druid City Music Hall. It's the number one place for live music on the Strip. You can check them out online at druidcitymusichall.com and check out their lineup, druidcitymusichall.com/shows. All right, Joey, we're going to put you to the test. Everybody okay. Last week, how many games did we pick last week? 5 games. We all went 5-0. We went 6-0. All of us went 6-0. And so we've got 7 this week. We'll see how we do against the spread. Katie especially went 7-0. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go in order on the timeline. Sorry, I don't have Missouri on here, Joey.
I think that would be a waste of our time.
I do too. Katie, let's start with Texas at Michigan, the game day game. Number 3, Texas is at Michigan. Texas, it looks like a 7-point road favorite. What do you think? That's going to be a lot of fun before we have to go over and get our workday started.
Yeah. Also, just in the full transparency, in case anyone's basing their picks on me, I did actually go 3-3 last week. So no one base your picks. I was on my island that I was alone on picking Notre Dame. I was correct on that pick, but some others I messed up. But for this one, I'm going to go with Texas. Michigan obviously lost a lot from last season, including their head coach. Didn't look great in week 1. They're still trying to figure out their quarterback situation, which is not ideal when you're, once the season started. The old adage, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any. So I'm going to go with Texas.
Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much exactly what I was going to say. Harbaugh's gone. All their players are in the NFL. They don't know exactly how their QB situation looks, as last game wasn't amazing. But when I think about this, they're now in the big house. Were they home last week?
Yes.
Okay, so they've already had their home opener. But regardless, I'm going to pick Texas here. Quinn Ewers, I'm going to say this right now. Quinn Ewers is my pick to win the Heisman Trophy this year. I determined that probably about 4 or 5 months ago. I'm sticking with it throughout. I think that they'll cover the spread too, win by like 14 or so. Simple as that. Yeah, I'm picking Texas.
Yeah, I'm with Hunter. Texas wins. Texas covers. Quinn Ewers, to me, could be the best quarterback in the country. You wouldn't hear an argument from me. I certainly think he's better than Carson Beck. So I don't know. Michigan has a lot to figure out, like we mentioned. They have a lot to figure out in many ways that don't just span the quarterback position. This is not the same Michigan, and I think that week 2 this season, that's going to be plenty for Texas to get it done. You saw what happened last year when Texas played Alabama week 2, and that certainly wasn't the same Alabama that played Georgia, in the SEC title game, or even Michigan in the Rose Bowl.
I'll jump on the bandwagon here and pick Texas. Yeah, to Will's point and everybody else's too. There's a lot of confusion going on there. A lot of organization to be done. I mean, their head coach doesn't need him under contract, so I guess he's just still an interim head coach, whatever label you want to put on it. But yeah, I'll pick Texas and a pretty clear victory.
Oh my gosh, y'all tempt me so badly to want to take Michigan to be the one on the island, but I won't do it. I like Steve Sarkisian too much, and I do have me a little soft spot for Texas. I know that people who listen to the show regularly have picked up on that. So I will take Texas and the cover as well. We'll move on. Arkansas is at Oklahoma State after beating the brains out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. Joey Van Zimmeren didn't mean anything. I know it was a Thursday night, so you were watching Missouri play their exhibition. But what do you think? Will Arkansas, as a 10-point underdog, be able to move to 2-0, 11 o'clock on ABC?
I do like a lot of the players on Arkansas, but I don't think it's going to be a close one. They're on the road against Oklahoma State too. I think they get it running away.
Will Miller asleep at the horn. Arkansas at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State 10-point favorite. 11 o'clock ABC. Go. You're on mute. We can't hear you. Hunter De Siver, pick it up.
All right. Very simple. There's one name, Ollie Gordon. Simple as that. 3 touchdowns last week. Last year's Doak Walker Award winner over Cody Schrader, who I honestly think he definitely could have gotten it for Mizzou. But yeah, simple as that. Ollie Gordon at home, favored. I'm definitely picking Oklahoma State.
Circle it back, Will Miller.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, I think, is going to win this game, and I don't think the environment is going to make tons of difference. And Ollie Gordon, to me, yeah, I'm with Hunter. I'm on his hype train all the way. Arkansas, I don't know. I don't think games like you saw last Thursday for Arkansas really show you a lot. And I thought there was plenty of content coming out of that game, like the Arkansas running back waving at the cheerleaders. That was absolutely hilarious. Oklahoma State, they've kind of had some adjustments. You know, a couple of years ago, they had one of the best defenses in all college football, which is crazy to say that about a Big 12 team. Yeah, but the year Derek Mason was there, they were absolutely outstanding. I don't think that's their reality anymore, and it's not just because Derek Mason is now the head coach over at Middle Tennessee, replacing Rick Stockstill. God, it was a heck of a carousel last year. But anyway, Oklahoma State wins. I don't know that they have as difficult of a time, you know, with all this Billy Napier, this, that, and the other. I think we understate the temperature of Sam Pittman's seat coming into this season. And if he's able to win this game, maybe that cools off a good bit. I don't think that's going to happen, though.
Sorry to keep it boring, but I'll actually just keep it simple and say Oklahoma State.
I'm with you, Katie Windham, and I love the simplicity. Oklahoma State, oh my gosh. Arkansas, what you did last week doesn't matter for anything. So Oklahoma State is going to win, in my estimation, and cover the 10-point spread. And yes, Will, I do hear your Sam Pittman hot seat, but I think that there is a small unspoken agreement between Sam Pittman and the administration that this will be the last year no matter what. So they're going to let him ride out the whole year, and then he will retire. He will resign gracefully, and that will be the end of Sam Pittman's run.
As long as it's not on a motorcycle, it should be pretty graceful compared to Arkansas standards.
True. Okay, let's move to another Power 4 game in the SEC versus the Big Ten. Cal is at Auburn. Auburn beating the brakes off of Alabama A&M last weekend. Auburn as an 11.5-point favorite. We got to send the wheel the other way. So, Katie Windham, you're going to start us Auburn with an 11.5-point spread against California.
I believe it would actually be SEC versus ACC. I know it's confusing.
Oh, gosh. Yes, they moved to the ACC, not the Big Ten.
On the Atlantic coast. But, yeah, Auburn. If Auburn could go and win at Cal last year, they're definitely going to win in Jordan-Hare this year. I'll talk about a game that you probably can't put much stock in as what Auburn did last week, but they're fired up down on the plains, and I think that'll continue this week.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn, they have a decisive duo between Peyton Thorne and Jarquez Hunter. I think that's more than enough to get it done. I'd argue Cam Coleman, freshman, he could definitely really improve week by week. I know he's a big recruit that Alabama missed on, and I think he'll dominate this week.
Yeah, Auburn's going to win. Auburn's going to cover. I sound very basic. I think the Twitter beef's been great this week between the Auburn and California fan bases. I thought Auburn might lose the game last year. That didn't happen. It was pretty close. I'm still not sold on Peyton Thorne being an SEC quarterback, nor do I think this upcoming game is going to be the decider on that perspective. But Jarquez Hunter, to me, is the best running back in the SEC. Difference maker. You know, we talk about talent gaps. Cal's a Power 4 team, but it's also California. They got all these long trips now as well.
Here we come.
It's part of the ACC, which is a technical foul in and of itself. Love the serenading from Joe there. But I was talking to one of my buddies.
We'll take Auburn. Joey Van Zimmeren.
I'll keep it short and say Auburn here again. Cal's playing two quarterbacks in this game, and again, to Katie's points earlier, that if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any.
Again,
what about my Madden team from a couple years ago? I'd swap out Matt Ryan and Matt Schaub just for fun.
So you could have like Matt squared. I don't see the reason.
Yeah, that was
Matt
the joke
in the game.
Okay, they did well.
Of course they did well. Okay, I want to pick California, but I'm not going to do it. I'll take Auburn with everybody else. Auburn 11.5. Okay, the only SEC game of the weekend, ABC 2:30 on ABC.
Wow.
ABC. Oh my gosh. South Carolina at Kentucky. What a terrible game that they get to start with ABC. Kentucky is an 8.5-point home favorite. Goodness gracious. Wildcats, Big Blue Nation, going to beat their brains in. Joey Van Zimmeren, you're up next. I'm taking Kentucky. We'll just make it clear. And the 8 points, 8.5 points. So what do you think? South Carolina at Kentucky. Lenoris Sellers, right? Lenoris Jenkins,
Yep.
Lenoris Sellers.
Lenore Sellers, yep. I was really rooting for Lenore Sellers and one of his first starts here. I felt like Tyra Banks saying we were all rooting for you, Lenore Sellers. And he and the rest of South Carolina against Old Dominion did not show up. So yeah, I think this is going to be an easy one for Kentucky.
Yeah, I got Kentucky in this game. I'm tempted to not take the points just because I feel like out of some of these, you have to have something where maybe there's a little back and forth or maybe it's not so cut and dried. I don't know, though. I don't see it being this game. I think Kentucky, is a pretty good football team. But I think that's more than enough. Shane Beamer, another guy that may not have a job this time next year, depending on the fortunes of his team.
He's a clown.
And again, this is one of those games that maybe you could tip the scales one way or another in the early going of this season, but I think Kentucky's going to pull it out.
Yeah, I'm piggybacking off the Shane Beamer stuff. I mean, he gets a good recruiting class year after year, it seems, and does absolutely nothing with it. Like, he barely beat Old Dominion last week. Meanwhile, Kentucky, Southern Miss isn't necessarily a powerhouse by any means, but they shut him out. That's more than enough for me to say Kentucky wins this game.
Yeah, Mark Stoops thrives on beating mid-SEC teams or SEC teams that finish below 500 in SEC play, and this is going to be one of them. South Carolina, obviously, as y'all have all hit on, looked real rough last week. So sorry to keep it boring, guys. Maybe our next game we'll be able to spice it up a little bit, but I got to pick Kentucky.
All right, maybe we have 3 more to go, and okay, we'll leave Alabama for last. The next one is Tennessee at NC State. This is in Charlotte, so it's a sort of a neutral site game. Tennessee, number 14 in the nation in the newest poll, is a 9.5-point favorite against number 24 NC State. Katie Windham, are we all going to get some splits here? Anybody going to back the Vols or anybody going to take the Wolfpack? Katie Windham, who are you starting with?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know much about either of these teams. Off the top of my head, I don't know if I could name a North Carolina State player. I'm sure if y'all said one, I'd be like, oh, yeah.
Grayson McCall.
Oh, yeah.
And even though it's in the state of North Carolina, I'm sure there will be more Tennessee fans there. So I'm going to go with the Vols.
Yeah, I was, as a recruit, Nico Iamaleava. Yeah, I might have butchered that. But as a recruit, he was top tier, maybe even number 1 overall. And now he didn't really play last season at all, but besides the bowl game. But week 1, he was unbelievable. Like, just ridiculous. Like, I don't think he's going to win the Heisman in his first season as a starter, but
what?
He's definitely like a dark horse. But I'd say like low on the list. That said, that's more than enough for me to pick Tennessee this week. Plus, you got James Pierce on the edge, who's going to be a top 5 draft pick.
Yeah, that kid's really good. But I think it's beyond names. NC State was god-awful against Western Carolina. Absolutely nothing about them in that game suggested they should be ranked. I thought for sure they would fall out of the top 25 poll, and I think if Florida State hadn't, they probably would have. I have lost all faith in this team. I'm a big fan of Grayson McCall from his days at Coastal Carolina, which I really enjoyed watching the runs at those teams. And Jamie Chadwell, who's now over at Liberty, doing a great job, went on. Seems like, though, that is a chapter of the past, and a great chapter it was. Mormons versus Mullets forever. But NC State, to me, is going to lose this game, and I'm taking the points. I don't care if it's at NC State. I don't care if you put it in the most hostile territory for Nico imaginable. I think Tennessee wins this game because I think they're that much better of a team.
Yeah, I'll hype on the Nico hype train. There was a lot of throws that, yeah, I mean, he just has such a calm presence in the pocket. Really looks good at decision making for only being in his second year at Tennessee. So I'll pick the Vols.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It feels like I need to go wash my mouth out with soap, but I will take Tennessee as well pretty confidently on the points. Nico Iamaleava, he looks like, he's going to be a problem in the SEC. Okay, last game that's not named Alabama is Mississippi State is at Arizona State. It's the last SEC game that's playing a Power 4 opponent. Katie, This one is a Big Ten opponent. No, this is Big 12.
Big 12.
12 team. Goodness gracious. Okay, Joey Van Zimmern, you're up first as the wheel spinning back around the other way. It's Mississippi State at Arizona State playing Big 12 Arizona State. 5.5 points. The Sun Devils are a 5.5 point favorite. Joey Van Zimmern, will the Jeff Lebby era get a nice signature win in week number 2?
I'm going to have to pull the same card as Katie did on the last one and say I don't know much about neither Mississippi State nor Arizona State, except a YouTuber I watched in middle school, is now Arizona State's starting punter. But other than that, I'm just going to go with the SEC team in this one.
I like this Mississippi State team a lot for what they're coming off of from last year, which was a lot of injuries, obviously one of the saddest coaching changes you could think of, and a lack of depth in the trenches, struggles at the quarterback position with Will Rogers from a guy that, you wouldn't have thought would have happened from a guy with that level of experience. But I still think they'll probably win this game. Arizona State has been kind of down in the dumps over close to a decade now, really. And some years I thought they would have been better. But Mississippi State has obviously, changed some things up. They've added Blake Shapen at the quarterback position, is a guy that I really like. And Jeff Lebby is a really good offensive mind. These former Pac-12 teams, and we now, the Big 12 sticker on the jersey, or not sticker, I should say patch on the jersey is almost appropriate. These teams struggle with defense. If he can exploit that, I think Mississippi State will win, even though it's a road game.
Yeah, I'm all in on Jeff Lebby, year one. I really think his work at Oklahoma hopefully should pave over towards Mississippi State. I think it already showed in week 1. Team had 56 points. Granted, it was against Eastern Kentucky, I believe. But then you got this transfer quarterback in Blake Shapen. He really showed out, and I think they're going to do the same again on Saturday. What's the spread?
5.5. Arizona State, 5.5 point favorite.
All right, so then I'm taking Mississippi State.
I thought I was going to be different picking Mississippi State on the road, but I'll be different and I'll pick Arizona State at home. But the reason why I was going to pick Mississippi State is because wasn't it last year that they beat Arizona on the road, and Arizona ended up being decent and Mississippi State ended up being not good, yet somehow Mississippi State won that game. But
fun game to watch.
What?
It was a fun game to watch.
Yeah, but I'll go with Arizona State just to finally have something different in our picks.
All right, and let's wrap it up with Alabama. South Florida is in Tuscaloosa.
So who's your pick? Are you picking State or Mississippi State or Arizona State?
Oh yeah, State. I'm taking State. I want to be different, but I'm taking State. I think Jeff Lebby's going to have some Blake Shapen cooking against some of these mid to lower tier teams. They're probably going to struggle. They're going to beat Florida, and then they're playing Florida in a week or two. They're going to beat.
I'm taking my high school to beat Florida at this point.
Yeah. So I'm taking State. All right, let's wrap it up. We're at an hour. Let's wrap it up. South Florida is at Alabama, and Alabama is a 31-point favorite. Number 4, Alabama is a 31-point favorite at 6 p.m. on ESPN. The over-under, if you want to play it, you don't have to, is 63.5. I've got my prediction written down. It's what I predicted earlier in the week with a small change. But let's see, Joey, you went first last time, so it's Katie this time goes first to spin the wheel. So, Katie, what is your official prediction? You nailed it last week, Alabama with the cover, right? So this week, Alabama 31-point favorite against South Florida. How do you see the game going?
I think they cover again. I don't know if the over-under. I don't know if the over is going to hit this week, but I think they're going to cover. I think they're going to be motivated to play a lot better than they did last year, score some points, have some sustained drives, keep the intensity up on offense. So I think they cover. And press Coach Saban when he comes out at halftime. All the good stuff.
Yeah, I agree with Katie. I think they cover. I don't know if they get the over on it. If I had to pick right now, this is an unofficial prediction. I'd probably say something like a 52-ish in that area to 13, which
Well,
doesn't
then the over would hit.
Yeah, that would hit. That would hit. Never mind. So you know what? Yeah, let's pick them to cover, and the over would hit. I just think a game with Nick Saban being honored and all his former, not all of them, but a bunch of former players being there, and even players that are currently on the team that are excited to see him, they're going to show out, and I think they're going to dominate.
Yeah, I have the over hitting at 55-10 Alabama. I think if Byron Brown plays the whole game, USF will get into the end zone against the twos on defense. But yeah, I think that Alabama will probably have their way with this team based on last year and based on Saban Field dedication. Everything is there for this team to be super motivated, like you wouldn't normally see for a game like this, and I think it's going to show.
Real quick, Joey, slip in the Missouri cover or not?
For the 31-point spread, no. Because I think they're going to put in their backups pretty early. I think it's going to be below 31 points. I think it'll probably be, I feel like 35.
No.
10 feels right.
Oh my gosh, Eli.
I don't think they're going to cover because I don't think they need to cover.
All right, I love you, but
although
I think
well, I mean, look, they got out to a 21 point lead, 21-0 within 5 minutes last week, which was fastest program history. That was coupled by an onside kick, coupled by a pick six.
The coach played like a dumbass.
That's well, I mean that too, but yeah.
All right, well, shoot. I'm not arguing with you. It's your prediction. Missouri, if you want to be a playoff team, you better hope you cover against Buffalo. All right, you want to play out the Alabama line or not? You don't have to.
I don't think I'd have any more insight to add than you guys, but yeah, I would say last year Missouri in their week 2 game. Did Alabama play a USF last year in week 2?
3.
Okay, gotcha. Mizzou last year in week 2 played Middle Tennessee State, won by 4, took a last-minute defensive stop. So,
thought
Stockstill what you guys are describing
that game.
What was that?
I thought Stockstill might have saved his job with their performance in that game.
Yeah, I mean it was a good job by Middle Tennessee State, mostly by Mizzou's fault. But yeah, so kind of what you guys are saying. Mizzou should be motivated for this game in the same way that Alabama should be to not let the same mistake happen.
Well, I wrote down 55-14. I know I wrote down earlier in the week 55-17.
Nice.
I'm taking Alabama 55-14. That's the cover and the over. And that should do it. We've been here for too long already, and we appreciate everybody who has joined us on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. You follow Joey Van Zimmeren at JoeyBZ_, Will Miller at Real WB Miller, Hunter De Siver at Hunter De Siver, that's DESIVER. You follow Katie Windham at Katie Windham_. And I am at Joe Gaither 6 on all your social media machines. We are Bama Central. Follow us at Alabama Crimson Tide on SI. We're going to cover the game tomorrow. We will be in the stadium and the Nick Saban Field dedication early. About 2 o'clock, we'll be on the premises ready to cover all things Crimson Tide tomorrow. So keep it locked right here on the Bama Central YouTube channel and Alabama Crimson Tide on SI.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither 6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.